I have two vectors in 3 dimensions, and I know that they are equal to each other. There are two unknown parameters, c and d, that are scalars in these vector expressions, and I want to find the values of c and d. I know if two vectors are equal to each other, then they have equal x components, y components, and z components, so I can set those equal to each other. On my left-hand side, I need to multiply each of the components of the vector by the scalar -2. And then I can just equate the x component of the first vector to the x component of the second. So I have 2 equals c plus 1, which gives me c equal to 1. And -8 equals d, or d equals -8. This third equation I don't need because I already know what c and d are, but it should give me, whoops, this is a -2 from up here, it should give me the same value of c as I got from the x component. So -2c equals -2, that means c equals 1. Okay, so my system is consistent. Alright, I'm also going to do an example where I'm given two parallel vectors and I'm trying to find some missing parameters in them. So here I'm going to have two vectors that are parallel to each other, and I'm going to need to find A and B. So I know if two vectors are parallel to each other, then one is a scalar multiple of the other. So for these two vectors, I know that there's a relationship between the x of this and the x of this, and the y of this and the y of this, and the z of this and the z of this, and that relationship is going to be consistent for each of those three equations. So because I know this is a scalar multiple of this vector, I can look down here at the z components and there are no unknown parameters there, and I can use that to find my scalar multiple. So I know if I take my first vector and multiply it by a scalar, I'm going to get my second vector. So I know that there's some scalar k such that when I multiply it by one of the vectors, I get the other vector. So that means that k times -2 has to equal -2/3. So I know that k is equal to 1/3. Now that I have k, I can find b, and I can also find a. So from my y components, I have k times 3 is equal to b, and I know that k is 1/3. So 3 times 1/3 equals b, b equals 1. Now that I know b, I can go back to the first row up here, the x components, and I can find a. I know that k times quantity a minus 1 is equal to 3 times b, and I also know that k is 1/3, and that b is 1. So if I multiply both sides by 3, I have a minus 1 equals 9, which means a is 10.
Excuse me, the Teen Health Center to speak in room 150.